We are seeing more and more immature birds around the sanctuary now, nestlings that have fledged and are now starting to venture out on their own. This downy woodpecker is a good example. He appears to be foraging like he's been doing it for years. However, the full red cap on his head indicates that he is still young. When he's mature, the cap will be reduced to a tiny red dot on the back of his head. His mother is close by still. Notice the lack of the red dot on her head. But he may only have 2 or 3 weeks to follow her until he is completely on his own. Down the trail a little ways, there is an eastern towhee singing. He is still singing to protect his territory. At this point in the season, he may be thinking about a second brood if he hasn't started one already. Towhees do very well around here, given that they have the proper early successional habitat. They prefer to nest in thickets of small trees and shrubs in fields, such as this one. But besides the birds, in fields like this, there's plenty of flower and insect diversity. Bergamot, which is supposed to be very attractive to pollinating insects, is now in bloom. The button bush that is in bloom now also seems to be attractive to insects. Cup plant, which is strikingly tall with beautiful yellow flower heads, is also in bloom right now. I've seen 2 species of plume moth this week. This one that is on this milkweed flower, as well as this one. Grasshoppers, such as this yellow striped grasshopper, are now starting to be heard singing and even less often seen. In this milkweed plant, we noticed a congregation of earwigs. This white one is freshly molted. They will molt 5 times before adulthood. Contrary to the infamous legend, they do not inhabit human ears. And although these forceps look formidable and are against other insects, they cannot break the human skin. Also on a milkweed leaf was the scarlet and green leafhopper. This was perhaps my personal favorite find of the week. The spotted knapweed coming into bloom is covered with weevils. The abundance of these weevils at the sanctuary is a relatively new phenomenon. And predators of insects, such as this garter snake, are around. I have to remind myself to look up every now and then, so I don't miss what's going on in the sky. Since it was circling around silently in the sky, and no alarm calls from other birds were being given, it would have been very easy to miss this hawk. It is difficult for me to say with certainty at this distance, but I believe that the long tail is squared off and the wings jut out in front of the head, indicating that this is a sharp-shinned hawk. As usual, the beaver pond is an exciting place to be. The beaver dam is lined with plants, including this blue vervain. And the beavers have been coming out earlier to get their food. But whatever they leave behind, the muskrats are sure to take. And there are still a fair number of dragonflies here at the beaver pond. The minnows here seem to be getting larger. I still think that they are blunt-nosed minnows, but am not 100% convinced. There are too many other minnows, such as chubs and shiners, that look very similar. I would like to see them all so that I could make better comparisons. Cedar waxwings can be seen hawking around the pond for insects. This is not new, but it does seem as if they are increasing in numbers. Perhaps the most emphatic birds around the pond are the belted kingfishers. They must be through with their nesting season, otherwise they'd be near sandbanks along rivers' edges. They usually don't stay perched for very long though. They fly up and down the shoreline, boisterously chattering. This kingfisher is a male. The female would have a second stripe across her chest that would be rust-colored. The large upper body with the raggedy mohawk makes this species easy to identify. The oldest belted kingfisher fossil was found in Florida and is about 600,000 years old. Another kingfisher fossil of a different species was also found in Florida and is 2 million years old. Both mallard families are still doing well. Here's the mallard family with 4 chicks. And here's the family with 5 chicks. The chicks have grown substantially and are almost as large as the chicks from the previous family. As per usual, the man-made pond is still a happening place. Steve, from the animal sanctuary, brought in a painted turtle that his kids had found in the road for a safe release. It struggled the whole way there, but when we finally got there, he didn't budge. With all the milkweed surrounding the pond, it's only natural that we would find milkweed bugs mating. And we noticed a new dragonfly species here. I was not surprised that I did not recognize it, but I was, however, surprised when Matt said he didn't recognize it either. Upon later research, I found that it is a green-faced clubtail. It apparently is widespread, but in very localized populations. I guess it was just passing through here, because we never saw it again. We see plenty of familiar bluets around here. But this is the first time we've seen an orange bluet. It's been a particularly exciting week to watch odonatas. I did notice a dead frog in the pond, so I decided to stick my camera on it. After sifting through 45 minutes of footage, I found that a handful of water scavenger beetles were feeding on it. Most of the minnows seemed to pass on by without even noticing it. However, one briefly investigated it, although I can't determine if it was actually picking at the carrion, or the vegetation around it, or the water scavenger beetles. In the swamp, there have been swarms of midge flies. It has been quite interesting watching the clouds merge and then split again. There is also a great diversity of birds in here, such as blue jays, and scarlet tanagers, and American robins, and goldfinches, amongst many others.
Okay.
Many dragonflies can also be found here, such as widow skimmers, and meadowhawks. In the field adjacent to the swamp, we have seen some turkeys, as well as the killdeer. Killdeer are part of a family of shorebirds known as the plovers. And although they are a shorebird, they are much more often found inland. They can be seen throughout the country, foraging in plowed fields and large lawns and pastures. The killdeer we see up here are all migratory, but in the southern U.S. they may stay year-round. We've also seen our first couple of monarch butterflies this week. Currently, they are in breeding season, but in another month or two, we will see the migrants. This milkweed beetle may look dead, but he's not. He's just frightened. He had just lost a fight with another milkweed beetle. I've seen other species of beetles feign their death for over 30 minutes. This one, however, only lasted a little over 3 minutes. Here's that same beetle that flipped down to the leaf below him. I couldn't help but admire the fierce nature of this bull thistle. These spines make them unpalatable to grazers, but have no effect on the pollinators. There's still plenty of action inside the woods. There's a handful of these calopteran beetles, members of the net-winged family. It seems that they prefer the nettle plants. We believe all of this sawdust is from carpenter ants, but still have yet to see one of them. And the May apples are fully fruited. And interestingly, I think I recognize this red eft from the unique pattern of dots. I believe we saw this one earlier in the year. The warm weather, mixed with the rain we've had lately, has revealed a great diversity of mushrooms in our woodlands. Most of the life of a fungus is spent in the soil or in rotting wood, invisible to the human eye. Only when conditions are right does the spore-bearing body emerge. Fungi do not photosynthesize as plants do. They must acquire their nutrients from a secondary source, just as animals do. Therefore, it should be no surprise to know that they are genetically closer related to animals than they are plants. Most fungi acquire their nutrients by breaking down organic matter, which renders them the important ecological niche of nutrient recycling, as shown in this red block fungus. And it appears that a medium-sized rodent, such as a chipmunk or a red squirrel, made a decent snack out of this mushroom. I've seen this spider, or one very similar to it, in several locations around the property. I don't know much about it other than its physical appearance. It weaves an orb-shaped web, and it's almost always dangling over creeks. I find spiders fascinating and would love to study them more intently, but it doesn't seem that time ever allows it. I suppose too many curiosities is a good problem to have. The tree gardens have become overgrown with weeds, so we had to trim them up some. The majority of the trees we planted had survived. There have been thousands of these goldenrod beetles in the genus Trahobda around the sanctuary. While trimming the weeds, it became apparent how abundant these things really were. They've even been crawling up my legs and getting inside my clothing. I keep finding them every day when I get home. And there's also a handful of these plant bugs. And the flower garden is looking great too. We've seen a black swallowtail, and we're hoping some will lay eggs on these Queen Anne's lace, which is one of their host plants. The garden also seems to be a popular place for the bald-faced hornets. And although these Asian multicolored lady beetles are non-native, they are still good pest control. Last fall, we were filling in mud pits in the trail with gravel, but had to stop because a chipmunk had inhabited the stone pile. He's gone now, but we could still see the remains of some of his food caches. And that about wraps up another great week at the Spring Farm Care's Nature Sanctuary.